Ippo finally has a signature move, and seeing it for the first time is crazy, bro. But picking up after the last episode, the first thing that we get to see is a fight from Miyata. He's going up against the #1 ranked Korean fighter in the featherweight class in Miyata's return back to Japan. It's the third round, and this Korean fighter named Lee is out of breath, beat up. It seems like it's just been a real intense fight so far, but on the other side of the ring, Miyata's unscathed. Lee pushes forward as the attacker, but Miyata's keeping the pace up, staying untouched. Watching from the crowd, Ippo's thinking about Miyata's overseas record. He had fought 11 fights with 10 wins and 1 draw. Naturally, he had thought Miyata would be way different than before, but it doesn't even seem like he's the same fighter. He's just that much stronger. In the ring, Lee's pressing forward, and the crowd is noticing that Miyata doesn't really seem like he's doing too well, but Lee's the one that's taking all the damage. They can't really tell what's going on, and inside the ring, Lee's thinking that he finally found the opportunity to get a good hit on Miyata to potentially swing the momentum into his favor, but in typical Miyata fashion, he disappears from sight. Lee says it feels as if he's fighting an after image. Every time he goes for a punch, Miyata's not even there. He can push forward as much as he wants, as much as he can, but he can never manage to make any contact. Realizing that chasing after him isn't gonna work, he presses his shoulder into Miyata and starts punching on his guard while he's got him pushed up against the ropes. This is his best opportunity to land a clean hit on him, but Miyata's not worried at all. He just hits Lee with a counter punch to the body, and Lee falls down, never getting back up. As the bell rings, Miyata's announced as the winner against the #1 ranked fighter in Korea in just 3 rounds. Outside of Korakuen Hall, Ippo's actually looking kinda dim. But before we get to see why, he's stopped by Dante. Now seeing Dante for the first time in who knows how long, Ippo's obviously shocked. But Dante's acting as if nothing even happened. He's just talking to Ippo about this fight from Miyata. It was a knockout punch, but not nearly as flashy as Ippo's and Sendo's, but he's explaining that a body blow can cause a knockout with just enough repeated damage. It's kind of cool to see Dante, kind of how I saw him before, as like a quote-unquote mentor, but not really in a mentor way, just as a fan of boxing, talking with Ippo, sharing some wisdom, sharing some insight on the match. It's just cool to see after seeing Dante as the opponent, as the enemy, as the villain. It's cool to see him back in a normal context. After we get to see more of his backstory, we get to see a full fleshed out fight from him. It's just good to see Dante. But he's pointing out how everybody in the featherweight class has their own thing going on. Vogue was real technical, real strong, but way more technical, possibly the most technical that we've seen so far. Sendo got his crazy power with the smashes. Ippo's got his own crazy power and will to fight. Dante just Dante. Miyata's got his counters, his speed. Everybody's doing something different. But Dante has stopped Ippo in the first place to tell him about his next match. He's fighting against the 5th ranked fighter in the WA, which is the World Boxers Association. And if Dante wins that fight, he's planning on challenging the world title. Ippo's impressed, but expects nothing less from Dante. Dante wonders if Ippo's still in recovery. It's been a few months at this point, and Ippo says that he's back into training, but hasn't been set up for any fights. Just being honest, Dante points out that if he's sitting around, he's gonna get forgotten. Everybody else, in his class specifically, is making rapid improvements, catching up to Ippo, and eventually, being stagnant for so long, he's gonna get left behind. The next day, at Kamigawa, Ippo shows up and is talking to Aoki and Kamura. They're telling Ippo that Yagi had just gotten back from overseas in an attempt to find matches for the 3 of them. Turns out, KBG has a triple header comeback match for all 3 of them in July. Aoki and Kamura are getting hyped just thinking about it, and Ippo's even more excited. He was just worried, especially after talking with Dante, that he was gonna get left behind, but now he has his opportunity to shine. He's wondering who the fights are gonna be against, but they don't have all the details. All they know is that they're gonna be fighters from either the Philippines or Thailand, and knowing Yagi, he's not gonna set them up with no bums, so they're sure to be tough. They're all itching for the fight, but out the cut, Unk starts instigating. You know, if they happy, if they smiling, if they hype, Unk's gotta come in and just mess with them, bro. He asked the 3 of them who's gonna be the main event. Now, if they're having a triple header comeback, all three of them are gonna fight on the same night. So essentially, you don't really want to be the opener. You don't want to go first because that's kind of the lamest spot. What you really want to be is at the very end. Everybody's watching, all the tensions are hype. It's just the best spot to fight in. They were all excited about getting a fight in the first place, getting the opportunity to come back after their losses. But since Unk brought it up, Aoki and Kamura are not only shocked, but they look directly at Ippo, knowing that he's probably set to be the main event. Since he's the most exciting out the group, he just came off a title match, he's got all the hype around him. But Ippo being Ippo, the humble man that he is, he offers the main event time slot to his seniors. So now, Aoki and Kamura get into it about which one is going to be it. They're going at it for a while, but Unk takes them both down, saying that luckily for them, he's got the solution. As if he wasn't the one who brought up the problem in the first place. But he says he's got his own way of deciding who's gonna be it. He pulls out this little bracket type of diagram drawn on this piece of paper. I don't know if I'm tripping, but I don't really understand how it works. But all we gotta know is it's purely luck based. So as they reveal the winners, Aoki won the contest and is gonna be the main event. He's obviously hyped, running all over the place. He's gonna be the main event. Ippo's gonna be the middle, and Kamura ended up being the opener. He instantly gets on the phone with his girl and is bragging crazy loud, knowing that Kamura can hear him about him being the main event in July, and he don't want to be too boastful. He don't want the opener to hear him. He's talking crazy, knowing it's gonna piss Kamura off. But coming from the office, Gramps finds this piece of paper on the ground. He's getting on all of their heads for not only trying to make this decision, but settling it with the piece of paper. He sets the order right then and there. Ippo's gonna be the main event, Kamura's gonna be in the middle, and Aoki is gonna be the opener. Aoki's at a complete loss for words, cause she's saying that she just finished bragging to all of her friends that her man is gonna be the main event. She's real excited, but now Aoki's gotta break the news that he's actually just gonna be the opener. The next thing that we see is over at Ippo's house. He's chilling with King Doodle Shirt, talking about the upcoming match in July. He's not really pressed about the fight order. He's just ready to finally be back in the ring. King Doodle Shirt's asking about Ippo's opponent, wondering if he's real tough, but Ippo just says that all he knows is his record is 10-2 with 5 knockouts, and is the 3rd ranked fighter in Thailand. He's also known to have never been knocked down, so Ippo can't help but assume he's pretty tough. But besides that, Ippo doesn't know a thing about him. Doodle Shirt's surprised that Ippo doesn't really have any info on his opponent. He won't even know what his opponent's gonna look like until they meet in person. But Ippo says that Gramps told him this is pretty common in the world of professional boxing, so he can't really help it. Over at KGB, Ippo's trying his best to start getting himself into shape for the fight, but the lack of info is really starting to get to him. He can't imagine his opponent, so he can't shadow box effectively, and it's just completely throwing off his rhythm. He's looking to Aoki and Kamura for some advice, for some type of direction, but they're like, oh, Mr. Main Event over here never looked better. You looking like you could take on the world title match right now. Us openers and mere mortals could never. They're dragging the fact that Ippo got put in this main event position, and Ippo can't believe it. Out the back, Gramps calls Ippo, saying that it's time to start his preparation. As they move into the ring, Gramps is setting up his rope in the corner, and Ippo confesses that his anxiety over not knowing his opponent is showing to affect how he's prepping for the match. But Gramps points out that that's a double-edged sword. Ippo doesn't know his opponent or his style, but his opponent doesn't know Ippo neither. He has to build himself, practicing his own techniques in order to give him the best chance for victory. In specific, Gramps wants Ippo to practice on his defense. Ippo's shocked because after taking such a long break from fighting, he's surprised to be focusing solely on his defense, which he's never done before. But that's not exactly what Gramps is saying. He's telling Ippo that he takes way too many punches, and even though it's nice for the spectators, after long enough, if he continues on this path, his brain's gonna be straight mush. Gramps says the more skilled a boxer becomes, the more important their defense is. The stronger you get means the stronger opponents you're gonna fight, and your defense just has to keep up. Gramps is telling Ippo that his itinerary is gonna consist of 30% offense and 70% defense. But in the middle of his explanation, we see Gramps coughing a bit, but he shrugs it off and we begin moving forward. He's doing rhythm and speed training with Ippo, eventually taking it outside, making sure Ippo's on his P's and Q's at all times. They end up going to this hill, and this man Gramps wants Ippo to push him and his bike up and down the hill 5 times over. Ippo's struggling like crazy to try and get this done, and we can see that afterwards, he's completely gassed. He's explaining to Unk what his training regimen is and how they're focusing more on defense rather than offense, and Unk agrees with it. Especially coming after a loss, you don't want to lose again, because losing back to back, the fans might start looking elsewhere, just as they did Vogue. This is adding bit by bit onto the pressure that Ippo's feeling for this comeback match. First, he doesn't know who his opponent is. Second, he's training more on defense rather than what he's used to on offense. And third, if he loses his comeback match, the fans might start going elsewhere. The pressure is just starting to grow more and more. Talking about Ippo's match, Unk says that there's no way this opponent, whose name is Panchai, is nearly as strong as Dante or even Miyata. So Ippo pretty much has to win. From the fans' point of view, looking on the outside in, this should be an easy fight for Ippo. The average fan isn't really considering how it is coming back from not fighting for so long and even the mental barriers he's gonna have to overcome. So they're expecting a lot from Ippo, thinking that it's the bare minimum. Unk's telling Ippo to go out there and pretty much prove that he's still the same fighter that he was before the match. If he leaves the crowd satisfied, then everybody ends up winning. Ippo gets back into it and the fans stay as well. Though Unk says he does know of a couple fighters who just continue to fight even after they lose their fans because they lose so damn much. Looking straight at my man's Kamura. The disrespect is crazy and Ippo's worried about Kamura's morale, especially after not being chosen as the main event for this fight, but Kamura turns around seeming completely fine. He's showing off some of his moves and I was like, damn, I thought that'd get to him. Kamura is explaining that he had gotten a phone call from Reiko, the girl that he had went on that date with, and she told him that she'd be coming to cheer for him. And just like that, he got back into his regular self. He's acting as if he was never upset about the fight order in the first place. He's fully locked in on going crazy in front of Reiko. Then, out of nowhere, Aoki pulls up. He had just come from visiting Tomiko, and he's just sitting there looking down. Kamura's trying to take this opportunity to kick him while he's down, and it's like, man, she must have called you a liar and you a fake and you ingenuine after you told her that you're not gonna be the main event. But Aoki just walks up, pulling out this jacket that Tomiko had stayed up all night to make for him, to add even more glamour to his main event. Everybody's shocked because they all know that Aoki's not the main event, but Aoki's either in denial or just straight up afraid to tell his girl. He's acting as if nothing ever happened and nobody even has the guts at this point to press him on it, as he eventually cracks, running out the building. Later that night, we see Ippo sitting there in bed, consumed by his thoughts, wondering about his opponent. This pressure is really starting to ramp up. It's growing exponentially as he's having nightmares about this potential fighter. Unk said that he's sure to be worse than Dante and Miyata, so at the very least, he should have a chance at winning, but still, the overthinking is getting to him. As he's continuing his training with Gramps, Ippo's thinking about his opponent more and more. He's making these bold assumptions based on the very limited intel that he has, and it's causing Ippo to think that Panchai, his opponent, is some type of perfect boxer. Perfect stamina, perfect endurance, whoa. This type of thinking just spirals down a rabbit hole and never leads to anything good. Ippo gets so caught up in trying to think of a strategy to beat this guy, and everything is boiling back down to offense. Offense. That's his strong point, his main strategy, what got him into boxing in the first place. But here he is, spending the majority of his training on defense. We can just tell he's so distracted and it's even affecting his training. After a full day of exercise, he goes home and his mom has dinner ready for him, but he doesn't even have an appetite, even though he's been doing nothing but working out all day. He's wondering why he's so unsure, why he feels so powerless. Maybe it's because of his extended recovery period, but regardless, Ippo's thinking that there's no way he wins this fight. Ippo finally comes to the conclusion that he's gonna lose again. But as soon as the thought enters his mind, he bounces back, knowing that he never wants to feel that type of despair and agony ever again. He has to win by any means. The next day at Kamagawa, he's intensively getting more and more aggressive with his training, and it's because of all the stress and anxiety from the fight building up more and more. He's wishing that Gramps can work on his offense a little bit more, maybe teach him a new move that he could use, but suddenly Gramps collapses. They call an ambulance and everybody ends up at the hospital. The doctor's explaining that Gramps had pushed himself a bit too hard. The buildup of fatigue and lack of proper rest caused him to get a cold, but it's not anything too serious. I was like, damn, I thought he took a punch from my nephew and got sent straight to the grave. Don't nobody think that's funny at this point. He's just saying shit. You know how gets down. He ain't got no type of filter. But out of nowhere, Gramps sits up saying that they gotta get right back to training. Everybody's telling him that he's gotta rest, but Gramps knows how precious this time is. In the days leading up to a fight, every second counts. We get a sense that Gramps is just as nervous as Ippo is, being his corner man. He took that loss versus Dante very personal, and obviously he didn't want to lose, but losing in the way that he did hurt even more. This was an interesting opportunity to look at things from a different light, since we pretty much see the entire story from Ippo's point of view, but Gramps is a big part in the fight as well. He doesn't show it, not nearly as much as we get to see Ippo during his recovery period, but that doesn't mean that Gramps was hurt by this loss any less. Just cool to see different characters taking the loss differently. It's not Ippo who was just hurt by it, but the people in his corner too. But anyways, while Gramps is trying to get back into training, Unks puts him in this dirty ass headlock. He's stuffing his face right in the Unks armpit. You know he ain't showered, nothing. He might really send him to the grave. But Unk's pretty much forcing Gramps to get his rest. It's all love at the end of the day. As Ippo makes his leave, Gramps is stopping him, giving him some last words about the anxiety and the pressure that he's feeling. Gramps is explaining that he's nervous about it too, but Ippo kind of downplays it, telling Gramps that he shouldn't feel any pressure from losing that title match because it was on Ippo at the end of the day. He says that he had just taken too many hits, and after all, the main rules of boxing is to hit without being hit. If he focuses on defense for this next match, he's sure to win. Ippo's saying this, but we get a sense he's saying this more for the sake of Gramps and to calm him down. Ippo doesn't truly believe this, or is having troubles having confidence in focusing on his defense, but Gramps says forget that. Ippo's offense is always going to be his strong suit. Ippo's confused because he was just going through a brain wrestle trying to figure out this whole defense is more important right now type of narrative that was going on, but Gramps says this focus on defense isn't going to be forever. It isn't a new direction for Ippo to go in. If he had all of a sudden tried to start to master defense or try and use it as his focal point, then everything they trained up until now would pretty much go to waste. The build up on defense is just a stepping stone to the bigger goal that he has, the bigger vision that Gramps sees for Ippo. Instead of hit without being hit, you gotta hit before being hit. Hearing this new ideology, Ippo's surprised, but Gramps tells him to hurry back and continue his training. Like he said before, every second counts. So back at Kamigawa, Ippo is thinking through this new ideology, hit before being hit. It sounds simple enough, but it requires a near constant use of both offense and defense simultaneously. But recalling from experience, Ippo's thinking that there's always been some type of delay when trying to use the two of them. When beginning his training, he's trying to figure it out bit by bit how he can minimize that delay, when suddenly he stumbles onto something. Maybe there doesn't have to be a shift at all. Maybe, just maybe, the goal isn't to switch between offense and defense instantly, but to think of the two in the same exact motion. Defend while you attack, and attack while you defend. We fast forward some time and we see Gramps being discharged from the hospital. He's walking with Yagi, talking about this upcoming fight with Ippo, and admits that he's a bit nervous since he wasn't really able to give him any solid training. But Yagi's not too worried. He tells Gramps that Ippo's been training diligently and has even begun to come up with some new ideas of his own. Now, we're at the day before the fight. The Kamigawa gang's pulling up to the weigh-in, and when Ippo walks in, even though he didn't know what he looked like before, he can tell immediately who Panchai is just from the energy around him. As they take off their shirts to start the weigh-in, Ippo is shocked looking at Panchai's build, but Gramps is trying to instill some more confidence in him, saying that his build isn't inferior. And as we zoom out, this dude Ippo built like a tank, bruh. We don't get a bunch of shots of his physique, but he's just looking crazy. The weigh-in goes fine, and we see that night, he's doing some training with the help of King Doodle shirt. Ippo can tell how tough Panchai is gonna be, so he's trying to squeeze in as much extra training as possible. He's rethinking the philosophy that Gramps had told him, hit without being hit. He's been working on this new style of fighting, this new signature move that can combine both the elements of offense and defense at the same time. So he doesn't need to switch between the two, rather just apply constant pressure while keeping himself safe. As he moves in, he begins going through a series of punches in this new style, and even King Doodle Shirt, who's a big boxing fan, has never seen something like this. He can't even tell what it is, he just knows it's different than anything he's ever seen before. Finally, we go to Korakuen Hall, and we get to see the opening fight. Aoki versus his opponent with this little snake tattoo dead in the middle of his chest. The crowd's going crazy because not only does he look tough, but Aoki, known as the Frogman because of his little signature frog jump attack, is going up against a snake. He almost seems destined to lose. Frog versus snake, even Unk in the stands is thinking this way. But inside the ring, Aoki is thinking back to the moments right before the fight where his girl was giving him some words of encouragement, saying that she's gonna root for him as loud as she can. She doesn't care that he's not the main event. She doesn't care that he's the opener. She's gonna go out there and support him for him regardless of what else is going on. Aoki's locked in, and as the bell rings, Mr. Snake Man jumps right into action, but only to be met with proficient counters from Aoki. Unk can't even believe what he's seeing. He's never seen Aoki move like this before. And in the ring, he's giving all the credit to Tomiko in the crowd. He's not afraid of any opponent in front of him, no matter how scary they look, no matter what it seems like, because now he's fighting for something. He's got something to protect. He gets a clean hit on Snake Man, knocking him down, and eventually Aoki takes the win. Unk's disappointed with the match. I'm sure he would have been way happier if Aoki had gotten knocked out, got sent straight to the ground, but nonetheless, it's good to see my guy Aoki taking the dub. As he leaves the ring, he tags in Kamura, who's feeding off of Aoki's energy. They got this little back and forth dynamic duo connection going on, saying that when a man's fighting for something, he becomes overwhelmed with this new sense of power. Not only was this the reason that Aoki was able to win so easily and move so crazy, but this is giving Kamura a power boost as well. He's strutting out into the ring as confident as ever. Of course, he hears Reiko's name, who says she was gonna come out and support him from the crowd, and as he smiles, looking over at her, he's glad that she really was able to make it. She's the one on his side that he's fighting for, that he has to protect, but we see that she didn't come along. As she's rooting for him, she has her arm around another man. Kamura, at this point, how could you not be, is distraught. And seeing this from the crowd, Unk can't even make fun of him. That's how you know the situation messed up. If Unk, of all people, is pulling his punches, then you're really down bad. There's no way else to put it. Over in Ippo's prep room, he had gotten news that Aoki had won, and is knowing that Kamura's in the ring right now, as the pressure is starting to climb once again. The absence from the ring is killing Ippo's confidence, as we've seen before, but closer and closer to getting in the match, it's like he doesn't even know how to feel. He can't stop thinking about it, but it's trying to force his brain that he's gonna win. He's gotta overrule all of this overthinking with positive thoughts in order to make it a reality. He knows that talking down on yourself, regardless of how true you think it is, how realistic it is, whatever, is never beneficial and is even less likely to help you get out of this train of negative thinking. Your state of mind is going to dictate your reality. Suddenly, he hears the crowd going crazy and he wonders if Kamura's already gotten a win, but inside the ring, he just took his second knockdown. If he gets one more, he loses by TKO. And he's just looking pitiful at this point. Aoki and Tomiko are trying to root him on from the crowd, give him some extra encouragement, but Unk knows that's making it sting even more, since them cheering as a couple is just adding insult to injury. He's in the ring, pissed, as he just runs in there and starting to trade blows. Even in the crowd, the spectators are trying to give him advice like, "Hey man, you gotta let yourself recover a little bit. You just got knocked down. You trying to rush into another barrage, you're gonna get knocked out." But Kamura's not worried about none of that. He says that nothing can scare him now. As he's exchanging punches, he says that he not only has nothing to protect anymore, but now he's got nothing to lose. He trades one final blow, which was enough to send his opponent to the ground, as the ref announces Kamura as the winner. But as he walks out the ring, he's got to walk right back past Reiko and her new man. Unk just says it's a sad victory overall. But nonetheless, Kamigawa caught their first 2 wins of the night, and now it's time for the main event. As Ippo's walking up the hall, he says it's felt like years since he's made this trip into the ring. Noticing how quiet the crowd is, he assumes that the turnout wasn't too crazy since he lost his last fight. It just makes sense that some people wouldn't be fans anymore. But as he steps out, he's met with nothing but praise and applause. They're all rooting him on, saying that it doesn't matter if he took one loss, they want to see him bounce back and return with a knockout just like he used to. Looking inside the ring, Ippo says that so much has changed since his loss, people are getting better, he stopped training, stopped boxing, stopped fighting, but one thing remains the same. The feeling of stepping inside the ring is second to none. Both fighters get into the ring and we actually get a view up top of not only Fuji, who's here to watch Ippo's comeback, but King Doodle Shirt as well. He's over here praying that Ippo wins, returning back to his normal self as a fighter. He knows that Ippo's been nervous about this return match and how important this fight is, not only for his career, but just for his mind state and his confidence in general. Doodle Shirt chops it up with Fuji for a little bit, explaining that he's real close with Ippo, telling Fuji that he feels like Ippo's been up to something recently. He feels that today he's gonna try something completely new. Of course, as a boxing super fan, Fuji's intrigued. In the ring, as they kick the seconds out, Gramps tells Ippo to take it slow. Since they don't really know what Panchai's style is gonna be, you want to minimize the risk. And Ippo recognizes that it's finally time for his comeback. All the nerves, the anxiety, the fear has all led up to this moment. As the bell finally rings, they slowly inch towards the middle of the ring, and Ippo assumes that Panchai is gonna fight with a very orthodox style, just judging from his stance. Taking Gramps' advice, Ippo's gonna take it slow. He offers out his hand to tap gloves with Panchai as a sign of respect, but he smacks it out the way, beginning this intense assault. Ippo is extremely shocked as Panchai immediately applies pressure and starts pushing Ippo back. Thinking from Panchai's point of view, he's a foreigner coming to Japan to fight the previously ranked #1 fighter, so it makes sense that he has this intense mentality. He's in an opposing enemy's crowd. He doesn't have anybody in the stands rooting for him, so it just makes sense. He's seemingly on edge and ready to get going. But as he's applying this pressure on Ippo, Gramps on the sideline knows that normally Ippo would have been able to easily respond to something like this, but his absence in the ring has taken a toll on his sharpness. Inside the ring, Ippo is surprised at how different Panchai is than what he seemed to be at the weigh-in, but then realizes that he shouldn't be shocked at all. They're inside the ring fighting. Of course he's going to be different, of course he's going to be intense and more intimidating. Gramps can tell that Ippo's looking sorry out here in the ring and just figures that he needs a little bit of a beating until he remembers what it means to be a boxer. Suddenly, Ippo dodges a punch and Gramps can tell by the look on his face he's starting to get back into it. After weaving, Ippo throws a right, sending Panchai flying back as the crowd erupts. Everybody recognizes that Ippo is back. He rushes in and makes a barrage worthy of his older self. Panchai can't do anything in this position but retreat. Then, using a series of left to right weaves, Ippo forces Panchai to retreat even further back, putting him up against the ropes. Ippo sends a punch, breaking Panchai's guard, and follows up with a big right, but feels no impact from the punch. Panchai just did the same neck twist that Dante used. They're impressed with his ability to use such high-level techniques, but in the ring, Ippo's doing his best not to be fazed. He's dodging a pretty intense series of punches from Panchai, but sensing that Ippo's falling into too passive of a playstyle, Gramps is telling him to stay aggressive. Ippo steps in and they start to exchange punches back and forth. He manages to land a couple body blows, eventually exposing Panchai's chin, but his uppercut wasn't enough to even knock him down. Panchai responds with a sharp right hook, which Ippo barely dodges, making his retreat. And from a distance, is beginning to see that same determination in the eyes of Panchai that he had saw in his fight with Dante and with Sendo and Bold. But the bell finally rings, ending round 1. In the crowd, could tell that Ippo won this first round, but still isn't back to 100%. In Ippo's corner, Gramps is going over the round with Ippo, recognizing how tough Panchai is. He's not afraid of Ippo's destructive power. He was able to take that uppercut and stay standing, not because Ippo's lacking and isn't at 100%, but because Panchai is just that strong. Remember, through all of his fights and his climb up to his current rank, he's lost a couple fights but has never been knocked down, so getting a knockout in Ippo's normal way is going to be tricky. Gramps wants Ippo to continue to score points with these smaller punches. He doesn't want to try and force a knockout. Ippo still needs time to get back into his full sharpness as a fighter, so he can't afford to mess around or he might end up taking too many unnecessary hits. But looking at Panchai in his corner, Ippo tells Gramps that it's alright. For the first time as far as I can remember, Ippo says don't worry about it. This round, I'ma knock him out. As they kick the seconds out, Gramps can't believe what he just heard. Ippo's not the type to promise a knockout like this, and both him and Yagi know it. As the bell rings, Ippo dashes in, but Panchai's sharp counter swings are keeping Ippo at bay. He's not even flinching at Ippo's attempts because he's confident that whatever it is, he'll be able to withstand it. So he just goes through with his normal punches. Gramps is confused as to what Ippo's plan is. He doesn't know why Ippo promised a knockout like that. It's not in his nature, but still, he's sure that Ippo wouldn't make such a bold claim for no reason. Ippo rushes back in, but in the crowd, Fuji and King Doodle Shirt can tell that Ippo's being way too pushy. He's just being way more antsy and over aggressive than normal, and is being forced back on the defense because of it. Inside the ring, Ippo's just thinking to himself that he's not getting the timing down just yet. He's got to keep on trying. As he's forced back into dodging even more and more, Yagi and Gramps can see that things are starting to get ugly. He's taking a ton of unnecessary risk as a result of being so overly aggressive. He's betting on this strategy that they don't even know about. But as nervous as Gramps is, he's even more intrigued, curious as to what Ippo could possibly pull out his bag. Ippo's dodging more and more as Yagi's starting to lose faith, but dodging a left from Panchai, he follows into a right of his own, weaving left and right, back and forth as he's swinging from side to side, but internally he knows that he needs to be faster. He's pushing himself to weave and duck his head faster and faster with each repetition when both Gramps and Fuji simultaneously recognize the technique that he's doing. Ippo gradually increases his speed as he begins to weave in this figure 8 motion, speeding up faster and faster with each repetition. He plants his foot, telling himself that he's got to swing from side to side, punching, rebounding, and evading, all in consecutive motions, as he starts wailing punches onto this man Panchai. Punch after punch after punch. Gramps is just amazed. This is the technique that he came up with, the answer to his defense problem that had caused him so much anxiety and stress, a classic technique from the old days of American boxing, the Dempsey roll. Ippo is piecing this man up with consecutive punches, ending it with the left, sending Panchai flying off the ropes. And as he falls to the mat, the crowd erupts. The announcer's going crazy, calling out that the almighty Panchai, with his renowned toughness, never being knocked down before, couldn't withstand this series of punches, as Ippo goes back to his neutral corner, exhausted. He looks over at Gramps, who gives him the thumbs up, as we just hear the ref counting in the background, but suddenly waves the count off, saying that Panchai can no longer continue. Finally, coming back into the ring after a long 5 months, Ippo has made his comeback. He throws his arm into the air as the crowd erupts once again, and both Yagi and Gramps run into the ring to congratulate him. Ippo's especially hyped because this is his first time trying to move on an actual moving opponent, not on a stationary object, but obviously is just glad that it worked. Noticing Gramps out the corner of his eye, Gramps can't believe that Ippo tried the Dempsey roll for the first time in a live match. Ippo has no clue what he just said. He was completely clueless to the fact that what he just did was an existing technique. This was all just born from his own thoughts and creativity. But before Gramps can explain, Ippo has to go up to the interviewer. In the stands, Fuji's also aware that Dempsey roll, explaining to Doodle Shirt that it's from an American heavyweight world champion who used to go crazy back in the 1920s. He was small in comparison to all of his opponents, but using this technique, he could consistently take down those who were way bigger than him. He's explaining that this figure 8 motion of the body helps him gain power in his barrage due to the recoil from one punch to the next. So gradually with each repetition, it gets stronger and stronger. Back in the ring, Ippo's getting asked by the interviewer what his aspirations and goals are now. Ippo gets nervous, saying that he has spent all of his time focusing on this specific match, but his fans in the crowd are saying that he's got to put, a little more bass in his voice, saying that he's got to take over Japan. At the very least, he should take down the current champ. But suddenly, everybody notices that the actual champ, Sendo, is sitting right there in the crowd. They all begin apologizing, talking crazy because he was right there, but Sendo pays it no mind. Ippo looks over to him as he just walks up to the edge of the ring, getting the mic from the interviewer. He tells Ippo that he needs his revenge. He challenges Ippo to a man-to-man showdown between the two of them. and getting the mic back with the crowd chanting his name, the two of them have a stare down. And of course, Ippo accepts.